Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us today. I'm here with Mr. Brent Slava, head of the Benziger news desk. Brent, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, that's me, Brent Slava, head of the Benziger news desk. I think you did a good job, Mike.
Excellent. So yeah.
How about I introduce you?
Okay, let's hear it.
This is Mike Marshall, head of product, head of sales. Anything else in the title?
I think that works. So yeah, I appreciate everyone being here with us today. What we're going to do now is just kind of show you guys how to register for the Benziger Pro platform. If you guys already have, please just bear with us for just about 30 seconds. So what you guys have to do to register for a free trial, just go ahead and select the register button right there in the top right corner. If you fill out your name, phone number, email, and password, and then hit request access. What that will do is that will generate login credentials. After you select request access, you just have to click the login tab. The same email you just created will be good for your login. And you just select login, and what you see here is a dashboard of the Benziger Pro platform. So before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know, if you guys do have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. We are going to make sure we get to them throughout the presentation. This presentation is for you guys to learn how to leverage the Benziger Pro platform and learn a little more about options. So please, let us know what you guys are looking to learn, and we will be sure to gear this webinar towards that. So Brent, where should we get started?
Oh man, lots of things to get started on. So a couple of the topics that I think we should touch on today. There was, in the registration, there was a couple of kind of guiding things that we were going to look at today, a couple that I really wanted to leverage in on. Options. We're going to go over how you can see options in the Benziger Pro platform, how these work a little bit, and if you're new to options trading, I am absolutely no expert, but I do know a little bit. We'll touch on some very basic fundamentals of options. Let's call it options 101 kind of thing. Also, interested to touch on a little bit in the hedging realm. What is hedging? How might you be able to use it? How might you be able to use Benziger Pro for it? And the last thing that I think you can also get really good insight out of the Benziger Pro platform, whether it's on the news feed or something else we haven't talked about yet, which is calendars, how you can leverage your time management for your trading strategy. So just one more time, just a quick recap. We're going to go over options, we're going to go over hedging, and we're going to go over how you could possibly leverage your time ahead of some kind of earnings event, economic data event, etc. How do you feel about those?
I love it.
Okay, sweet. So Mike, why don't you? Mike's kind of at the helm here. He's controlling the wheel. I'm riding shotgun here. I'm going to kind of take you through, but he's going to be clicking around. So why don't you pull up the news feed? Mike, just click the news feed widget there. You see a ton of information here. Yeah, give it maybe one more zoom. So in the top right corner of your screen, I would note the filters button. So what are we filtered by right now, Mike? Click that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the default to the filters is going to be set up with the Benziger signals and the Benziger wire.
So tell me real quick, what's the difference between the categories, sources, and watch list?
Excellent. So the categories, what these are right here, these 25 different categories or so, are each of the different categories that the news desk tags each item as. So it could be more than one. It could be a rumor and an option, correct?
That's right, absolutely.
Excellent. So by selecting these categories, what we're doing is turning everything else off. So if we only wanted to see option activity, we would just come in here, select options, and you will see that it's filtering out our feed and we're only seeing option activity.
What about sources real quick? Click over that sources tab.
Yep. So we have the Benziger signals and the Benziger wire. Brent, since you're heading up the news desk, what should be some things that I should know are the differentiators between the signals and the wire?
Good question. So Benziger wire, and you're going to see it you can see on Mike's screens right now on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see there's a little source code. It says BZ wire in some of them. It says signals in some of the others. BZ wire, or the Benziger wire source, is a piece of curated content from one of the reporters on the news team. We're looking at a ton of sources every day. We're looking at press releases. We're looking at SEC filings. We're looking at social. We're looking at a ton of stuff. And what we're doing is we are kind of condensing that down into what's a lot more digestible. As far as what's the difference between Benziger signals and the BZ wire, Benziger signals is a relatively new source that we've added to the feed, and what it is automated alerts. So we are watching quotes throughout the day. We're watching regulatory sites like the NASDAQ where we can see trading halts, and with the Benziger and the BZ signals, what you're going to get is you're going to get notable price action. We are looking at quotes throughout the day. If we see a stock move sharply higher over a 5-second span, you're going to get an automated alert. There's no humans involved. It's very fast. It happens within a fraction of a second that you're going to get this alert. You're also going to be alerted to trading halts. If a stock is halted for news pending, or if a stock is halted on a circuit breaker, you're going to get an alert immediately. Also, a couple of other new, even more news, Benziger signal items that we've recently added. We've added options recently, so you get automated alerts when our system notices unusual option activity, and we're definitely going to touch on that a little bit later. The last one I'd highlight is block trades. If within the tape, if there's a huge block that goes off in GE, there's 2 million shares block that trade in GE, you're going to get an automated alert on that. So really cool stuff with the Benziger signals.
Excellent. Thank you, Brent.
Okay, so let's jump back to, so what I want to do, why I had you highlight the filters button there is I wanted to, you already did it, but let's go back and do it. Click filters, and we're gonna just do options. We're gonna start off with options. And so what you're gonna see here is you're gonna see some different formatting for the BZ wire options alerts, and you're gonna see a little bit of different filtering for the BZ signals options alerts. And like I said, this is a relatively new feature that we've added as far as the BZ signals go. So we are working on the format. We're going to get a little bit more consistent format for you here. We think it's fine as it is right now, though. What we should be focusing on here, so if you get a BZ signal option alert, again, it means that there was some kind of trigger that went off, something that was unusual. If you see a BZ wire option alert, what that means is there was a member of the news desk who also seen that BZ signals alert that you probably seen, but thought it was notable enough that they wanted to type out a headline all on their own. They wanted to actually, you know, put a little color in there for you. And what makes something unusual as far as options go? Well, there's a couple things. You can look at exercise price that is out of the money, as it's called. That would mean that the stock is trading where below. If it's a call, let's say it's a call, if there's a stock that's trading below where the call was, that would be in the money. Your contract is basically good to go. You could sell it right now and it would be in the money. If it's out of the money, it means that before you can exercise that contract, the stock needs to move higher.
Excellent. Or lower, correct?
If it's a put, yep. If we're talking puts or calls. And something else notable, at least as I'm seeing it, as the rest of the news team is seeing it, what you should be looking for is a high ratio of volume to open interest. So what does that mean? Let's look at like one of these right now. So Mike just highlighted a Cal Maine, I believe that is, option alert. It's the June monthly 3850 put. There's 500 contracts that have traded, that's volume, and that is against 0 open interest. So what's volume versus open interest? Think of it this way. Volume is the contracts that have traded in the current session. Open interest is the contracts that have traded in all the prior sessions.
So Brent, if I'm hearing you correctly, today there was 500 contracts in the option market for CALM.
Yes.
Before that, no one's ever traded.
There was not a single contract traded at this contract specifically. And again, that's the June 3850 put contract. There hadn't been a single one traded before. Today, for whatever reason, we don't necessarily care about the reason, We just know that 500 went off the board. And why do I say we don't necessarily care about the reason? That seems kind of crazy to say. Well, we're not going to speculate on what this trader was betting on. It doesn't really matter to us. What matters is the activity itself. What matters is that there is some kind of unusual activity happening. You don't know what it's going to be, but just take note of it. Maybe put this stock on your watch list, and we can, watch it for later, see if something happens, kind of thing.
Great.
So, I mean, I threw a lot of jargon, I think, at you there. Is there any kind of stuff that you would maybe want to take a quick backtrack on and talk about real quick, Mike?
Definitely.
Okay.
I would say a couple things that stood out to me.
Okay,
so,
great.
When you were explaining the option contracts, and I'm going to try and, make sure that all of our listeners can understand.
Yep.
Each of these contracts are how long?
Okay, so how long the contract is available for is going to be defined by the expiry. And
Excellent.
As far as the Benziger Pro fee goes,
is that going to be?
That's it. It's that first little figure. It's that first date there.
Excellent.
And so one thing I would mention about these is there are recently, this is a pretty recent thing, that there's weekly options in some stocks now. And so how you can see that on Benziger Pro is it's going to have basically a date. So like a good example here would be Micron and Qualcomm, those first two that we're seeing right there. So what's happening here is I would bet because that Qualcomm option alert is right in the middle of the month. It says May 19th, the May 19th $50 put. That's probably a monthly contract. If you see an option alert like that Micron one there where it is at the beginning of a month, it's probably a weekly contract. And so again, what this means is if you see whatever month it is, whatever week it is, that's when that option contract will expire. After that date, that contract is no longer good. But an important thing about options is options were created for different than their usage right now. Meaning, what happens when you buy one contract of an option is you're getting the right to own 100 shares when that contract expires. Most traders won't exercise that contract and thus gain those 100 shares. They'll actually just trade the option as a security itself. So that's where we get this price. A little bit further down in our options alerts here, you'll see a price. Let's look at this Weight Watchers one here. So we're looking at the Weight Watchers May $16 put contract, volume of 620, and that is at a price at 85 cents. So what does that 85 cents mean there? Good question. I was like hoping that you would pick up there and be like, oh, I know the answer. No?
Go ahead.
Dang it. I was trying there. Okay, so let's see. So what you want to look at with this price here, let me highlight this price here. Which one were we looking at again? 85. The Weight Watchers 85. Okay, so this 85 cents here, the Weight Watchers 85 cents, this is the cost of that contract. So while the underlying security is going to be, at least for this option contract, the May 19th, the May $16 puts, that expiration, that strike price is $16. That's the underlying stock price. This contract costs 85 cents. So if we're using these options alerts as a way to indicate some kind of investor interest, and why I say some kind of is because you don't really know who the bettor is out there. You just know that the bets are coming in. How you can use this is you will have to, so if we're using this Weight Watchers one as a good example, let's say, let's pull up, I'm just going to click over here, Mike. We're going to do a little side here. We're going to open up a details page, and we're going to just see that the Weight Watchers shares are trading around $17.89 right now. So if we jump back over to that contract, I'll highlight over here so it's a little bit easier to see. Oh, is this the same one actually? I think this was a different one. We were looking at, was it this one? It was the 85 cents one, right?
Yeah, right here. Yep.
See that? This one. Okay, sweet. Okay, so think of, when you see these alerts, think of it this way. If shares are trading at $17.89 right now, and this bettor is willing to pay 85 cents for this $16 contract. In order to make a profit, they're going to have shares of Weight Watchers fall from $17.89, where it is right about now, to $16 plus the cost of what they paid to buy that contract. So what that means is we're going to also have to subtract that figure. In this case, we're going to have to subtract because it's a put. It looks like this trader might be betting for some downside. We are basically going to have to subtract the 85 cents from the 16 cents. What's the math there? 15. Did I do that right? 15. No, 15. Yes, that's right, 15.15. So the math would be Weight Watchers is going to have to fall from 17.89 to about 15.15 just so that this trader can break even. They're not even going to make a single cent if shares of Weight Watchers fall to 15.15. They're not even going to make a single cent. They have to have the stock fall to 15.14 before they can make any money. So just think about that trader out there. That trader might have information that we don't know about. They're making a bet. So again, you just want to focus on the fact that these bets are being made. If you start seeing, bets clump up, I guess, bets sort of keep stacking, then you focus a little bit more on it. You're like, wow, we just seen 10,000 contracts in this GE put that's happening. I don't know what's going on, but it seems like there could be some bettor out there, some trader who thinks they know what's going on, and they're betting for a lot of downside. Okay, the options is some pretty heady stuff. So I hope that didn't overwhelm anybody too much. And again, we're staying pretty low level here. We can get into some more advanced stuff, but I think we're probably gonna have to say that for another webinar.
Excellent. So Brent, how could I, leverage this Benziger Pro platform to make sure I'm getting the most out of the option activity that we're publishing and posting each day?
Okay, so what I would say is, I say this a lot about a lot of the tools in Benziger Pro. Use it as another tool in your tool belt. I don't think you should be making all of your investment or trading decisions just based on options activity, unless of course you're solely an options trader. But if you're an investor or an equity trader, use options activity as another little something that you can add so that as you're sort of going through your fundamental analysis, maybe you're looking at some technical levels, you're adding technicals into your analysis, maybe recent option activity is something that would, tip your decision over the cliff, and you're going, okay, well, I really like this stock. There's a lot of strong fundamentals standing up. There's really good technical signals that we're seeing right now. And not only those two things, but we've seen a ton of bullish call activity recently. So maybe I can go long here. That's kind of how I think about it, some of this stuff.
Excellent. What about, I hear this often, hedging a current position. They're playing the option market to hedge their current position.
Okay.
Would that be possible for you to take a dive into that?
Sure, that's a good little transition to start talking about switching over to hedging here. So when you say in hedging, we'll start really low level. Hedging is basically a way to protect, I would call it a major investment that you have. If you're very long shares of GE, if you have 20 million shares of GE that you're long, and you're saying, if the stock does really well, I'm going to make a ton of money. However, if the stock goes down, I'm going to be out my butt here. A really good idea might be to use some option contracts opposite of what your main position is to potentially reduce some of the risk that you're having with that huge bet. So hedging can come in a ton of forms. You can hedge equity to equity. This is something that happens, I think, a little less commonly than using options to hedge. But an example of hedging something via equities would be, I would call it a simple pair trade. You want to gain some extra exposure to Pepsi, and you feel that Coke, at the same time that Pepsi is doing really well, isn't doing so great. Maybe you go long one and short the other. You sort of turn it into a bit of a pair trade. Also, you can hedge by sector. If you are excited about the discretionary sector, you could be long discretionary. You could start shorting the non-discretionary. Also, you can do it across security classes. The very common one is long equities, short gold. You have a huge position in the SPY, you have a huge position in the S&P 500 futures, and you take out a lot less of a short position in gold, so that when they move, the kind of adage is stocks go higher, gold goes lower. Stocks are more risk, gold is less risk. So if you wanted to hedge your equity bet, you might take a small position in gold short, so that if your long position doesn't go well, you'll make a little money on your gold short, and you will sort of offset that loss in your SPY long. And then, you know, the one that we just sort of got to from here is equities versus options. That's what a lot of hedge fund managers do. They will be very long a stock, and they will have a short position. They'll be either they'll be writing calls, or they'll be buying puts.
Okay, great. That was a very great description of the different ways you can play the options. You know, just want to remind all of our listeners out there, please, if you guys do have any questions, to drop them into the chat, and we will be sure to get to them, you know, throughout the next 15 minutes or so. So Brent, as I use this Benziger Pro platform,
Yep.
and I do play the option market, but I want to make sure I'm not missing any other news. Is there, you know, a way that I can like visually see quickly on the screen, you know, when an option alert or when any activity in the option market is happening?
Okay, I think I know where you're going with this one. So let's say you are an opportunistic investor or trader. You don't like to stay sort of focused on one sector or one stock. You like to be open to new ideas, and, you know, it'll give you something to go research, and you can learn a little bit about a company. In that case, you want to have your news feed open to as many categories as you can. I would recommend not having any categories on. If you're looking to get new ideas, you basically want to have nothing checked here. You want to have all your categories in. But if you're very excited about, you know, being up to speed on the options alerts, what you can do is there's a cool little feature in Benziger Pro, and it's up in the top right hand corner of your newsfeed. Mike is circling it there. It looks like a little what do you call this thing? A little cogwheel.
Yeah, gear almost.
It's a little gear. So it's the settings button. So you jump into your settings here, and what are we looking at here? We're looking at, you can increase or decrease the size of the text. You can increase or decrease the size of the space between your headlines. Again, kind of visual. And then we're getting down here into the theme section. This is where I'm going with this. So Mike, just click the add themed button here. We already have a couple classes of news, exclusives, hot, and market movement exclusives. We'll get to those maybe a little bit later, that are highlighted a different color by default. The idea is that if we have these headlines sticking out to you, you know, it's a big red headline sticking out to you, it's going to be very hard to miss, especially in a news feed where I'm telling you, you know, be open to new ideas and have as many as you can. It's really cool to have these colored, and, you know, Mike's he's clicking them here for you, and you're only seeing those. We'd have to like scroll down the feed to see one of those headlines. We don't have to do that though. Mike, click. Oh, actually, there is one real quick. So a couple of hot headlines. There was Qualcomm earnings after the close today. There was eBay earnings after the close today. It's very hard to miss those. So Mike, click back to the settings there. Let's do this for options. You can customize a ton of these. Look, you get all your sources, you get all your categories. So go find options. And what you can do is you got this cool little color slider. You can make it kind of whatever color you want. So you want to add another theme?
Yeah, just because we have so much activity coming through these signals, I figured we might as well highlight that.
Yeah, this is like a pro. If I could give you one good tip, something that I use the Benziger Pro feed for, it would be this kind of color scheme here. So close that window now, Mike. So we got like a kind of purplish for our options, and we have kind of sort of bluish for our Benziger signal. So when one of those automated BZ signals come across your wire,
I guess we'll make them stand out a little more.
I was like, they're very similar. So BZ signals is kind of this yellow now. So as you're kind of scrolling through this, or, you know, if you're scroll up to the top real quick, Mike. So how the newsfeed works is when a new news item gets published to the wire, it'll kind of like flash in for a second. I think it turns sort of like orangish color.
Yep.
If you have all these headlines coming in at once, and you can't always be staring at your newsfeed. If you're not always looking at your newsfeed, you want to be able to look back over at your newsfeed and get alerted to something important that you might have missed. And you can define that. Whatever is important to you. Mike just went in there and he changed his busy signals. That's important to him. He changed his options color. That's also important to him. You can customize it however you want to. A sort of extreme example of that would be, click up on the filters real quick, Mike. So we can jump over to the sources tab. And like I use the Benziger Pro feed to get a lot of SEC filings and to get a lot of press releases. However, that will increase the amount of information that's coming into your feed by 20 times. So how do you kind of spot this stuff amidst all this? Well, you can use those colors. So actually turn back on your BZ wire, Mike, and let's jump over to the settings button again. And so set a source theme. So click down there and do SEC, make it a nice little color that you like. There you go. That's good. It's like a little orange.
Yep. We'll try and make it stand out a little more.
Okay. And then, so do press releases also real quick. So add your theme, press releases, scroll down there. There it is. And
what's great about this is you can set this up custom to whatever your strategy is.
Right. So now close all those things done there. So look, what you have to do now, and this is a bit of a challenge. You just kind of got to remember the colors that you set. If you remember what's purple, purple's press releases. What's green? Green's SEC fines. Now you don't even really have to look over. You don't even have to take your eyeballs over to the right side of your screen and see what the wire code is. You can just kind of look at the colors and know, here's a press release, here's an SEC fine.
Excellent. And what is happening on this platform, just so everyone knows, it is automatically saving. So I could sign out right now, logged out, log right back in, and I still have all of my custom features set up the exact same way I left them. If I wanted to rename this workspace, I could rename it, custom feed, and I could just build off of that, just like tabs on a browser. Right. And we noticed that when
look, the headline just popped in there.
Yeah,
it's kind of orange. Hard to miss, and it kind of fades out a little bit.
So I have all these set up on the custom feed, but it's back to the default on the workspace too.
Gotcha.
So I go back to the default by two ways: either opening up a new workspace, or if I were to click this X right here, I would go right back to default. So if I, wanted to clear out all of these options, clear out all of my filters, all of my colors, just to go back to default, I would select this X right here. Brent, is it okay if I do that, or we want to stay?
I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay. So I would go right back to the default screen. So I would have to set up all of my filters again, all of my colors. So just remember, the system is automatically saving, and you're able to continue to build off it. If you ever get it set up to a point where you're not sure if it's the exact way you wanted it, all you got to do is just select clear all or hit the X's, and you're going to go right back to the default.
It's also I think you also kind of just gave a little warning. If you
Absolutely.
If you don't want to lose your settings, be careful of that little X button.
And for the question that just came in, the pricing, what we are going through right now is the entire platform that you guys have seen so far is the basic platform. The add-on features would be the audio squawk and the chat with the news desk. And if you guys are interested in hearing more about that, we can have a conversation offline just to kind of keep this focused on the options activity.
Okay.
Brent, I definitely took the car off the road there. So
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think we're okay.
Definitely.
It matters what the audience thinks. Did he take the car off the road, the audience? Let's hear your feedback.
Yes, and please keep the questions coming. We're trying to make it seem like we're not jumping around here, but we're just trying to make sure that we are answering all of the questions that are coming in. Keep them coming. And Brent, tell me about the next thing I need to know about option activity, whether it has to do with either some fundamentals or you know, just making sure I understand how they fully leverage the platform.
Let's see. I mean, I guess I would just reiterate that, you know, use it as another little something in your tool belt. Just use it as something else in addition to fundamentals, in addition to the homework you've done, in addition to the technicals, the charts you might be looking at. Use the options activity as an indicator of that something could be happening with the underlying company, the underlying stock. I think that's kind of a good little wrap for that section. So one other thing that I did want to touch on really quickly, and of course you can leverage options from it, but I sort of want to just, like, I think we talked enough about options. So one thing that I wanted to jump over to, away from the news feed a little bit, is the calendar.
Excellent.
So let's see here. And I think we actually had a question, I think I've seen a question in there a little bit earlier about IBM's earnings release. I think the question was something like, would Benziger Pro Feed have alerted you to the fact of IBM earnings? So that's where the calendar is coming into play. So there are pieces of content that will alert you to upcoming events like earnings, like economic data points. Calendar is a really visual kind of, like, you know, we're looking at it right here. It's a table. It's a very visual way to see a whole lot of information. What were you going to say a second ago, Mike?
Yeah, just that there's a couple ways to get to the calendar. You know, you can either select it right there, or top left corner, you see the calendars. Just click it with your mouse. You'll see, you know, you could search by a individual security right here.
There you go, IBM.
You know, and you'd see when their next earnings report, when their previous earnings report was.
A whole history here. You got a whole history of all the recent earnings reports. I mean, not even recent. We're talking about going back to like 2012. You got a nice track record here of the earnings per share and sales that the company has reported. Our calendar is limited to earnings per share and sales right now. However, those are absolutely the two big numbers that you want to look at for any earnings report. And so, you know, to the user, I forget who it was a little bit earlier, who asked about the IBM earnings report, I mean, right here, just looking at this calendar right away, I know that I don't have to worry about IBM earnings again till, what is it, July 18th, I would guess. And right now, that is an extrapolated date. So our system is tracking the earnings reports in the past, and we're extrapolating out. I think we display just one quarter, but, you know, you can kind of guess, I guess, when the Q3 number.
We do display more.
Okay, we're just limited by, okay, I see what you're doing there.
So you can select the date range just by clicking.
Cool. So go out to like, yeah, there you go. Do the whole year. See what happens here.
So we'll see that we have projected 2 quarters in advance, and that will be mainly on every security. We try and project at least 2 quarters out.
Yep.
You know, and being on the support team and on the product team, I do talk to a lot of users. And you know, they give us a lot of great feedback on how accurate these dates are.
So we're getting these right, you're saying, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so this is cool. You know, you're going, all right, this is cool, but I don't really know how to use this. How do you use this? Well, I would say at the least you're getting a heads up that there is probably very likely going to be some volatility happening in whatever you're looking at. If it's IBM in this case, the sort of idea that I'm thinking is, you know, if you didn't have this calendar and you were long IBM, you were an owner of IBM shares, and today happens and their earnings hit in the morning, and you're going, oh my gosh, I don't know why the IBM shares are moving. If you would have tuned into the calendar, you could have just known. And maybe you're like, well, I don't want to mess with that volatility right now. I'm being pretty conservative with my investments right now. I don't really need volatility in my investments. I'm going to just take my trade off. I'm going to maybe come back in after the earnings report, but this volatility that might hit around an earnings report, it's just too much. I don't want to be involved. Similarly, I'm going to have you show the audience here, Mike, a different calendar. Let's jump over to the economics calendar.
Excellent. And so, like I said, you know, we can enter the calendar by selecting the icon, but what we see when we get to the calendar is the default screen. Just like we had 2 filters that were set at the default. When we get to the calendar, the default is going to be today's earnings.
Today's earnings, okay.
So we can check out, roughly the 11 other calendars that all come with the Benziger Pro platform. They're all in one spot, very easy to locate and maneuver around. So you said you wanted to take a look at the economic calendar.
Yeah, because we're kind of zooming out here a little bit. So I want you, actually sort by the country there, Mike. So you just sort it by country. It's going, how's this going? Alphabetical descending, I think. So the U.S. is going to be right around the top. Okay, so let me use an example for today. So we had the beige book today. The beige book hit at, I think you might be, you might be in, how does that work? The beige book was at 2 actually today. So I think you might be in Central, does that work? No, that would be earlier. I think that might be a bad time, actually. So let's say, let's give a better example here. So the EIA inventory data, a couple down there, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe like 10 data points EIA. So what is this thing? This thing is some inventory readings on crude oil supplies. So if you're a trader in the commodities market, if you are involved in oil, you would absolutely need to know that there is a very important weekly data point coming out at 10:30 this morning. And again, you just position for that volatility. You just position, maybe you want to make a bet. You want to make a bet, a bullish bet or bearish bet on crude. You know when to do it. You need to do it before 10:30. If you got some good information, you did a lot of fundamental research on your oil inventories over the last week, and you think that oil inventories are going to be down a ton over last week, you want to make a bearish bet. You know you need to have that bearish bet in probably well ahead of 10:30. If sort of the other side of that, if you don't want to have be forced into a trade or an investment by an event, maybe you just remove yourself from that trade. If you're long oil and you're sort of did a little research and you're not really getting a good answer on what you think these inventories figures are going to be like, maybe just get yourself out of that oil trade. You let the volatility happen at 10:30. 10:30 happens, maybe it's 11, maybe it's 11:30, maybe that oil starts slowing down a little bit. Maybe you can get back into the trade after that. So what do you think about that, Mike? How was that kind of description of sort of like event-driven items?
I think it was great. In some of these data points right here can also help let you understand kind of what the census is and kind of what has happened previously, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're just kind of going across, obviously we got the time that's going to happen, the date that's going to happen, we got the country, we got the event itself. The actual is the reported result. So for example, today with the EIA numbers, the 3 that I always look at are crude oil inventories, that's right there, gasoline inventories, and distillate inventories. Those are the ones that are important to me. You can have different ones that you look at, just let you know the ones I like. So what happened here is over last week, crude oil inventories were drawn upon by about 1.03 million barrels. Traders on the floor were looking for a draw of just under 1.5 million barrels. So what happened here today is traders were actually expecting more inventory to be taken out of crude oil than happened. So this should have been a pretty favorable reaction here.
Excellent. And then how do we...
Oh yeah, let me keep going though. So prior, what's that column? Prior is just the last period result. So in the case here, this data point is weekly. So for the prior, that's going to be last week's figure. A lot of data points that we will highlight in here are going to be either monthly. So when you look at that prior, it's going to be the last month, or quarterly. So when you look at that prior, it's going to be the previous quarter.
Excellent. Thank you, Brent. Really appreciate that.
No problem.
Any other calendars that we should be paying attention to?
I mean, a ton of them. Yeah, I would be paying attention to a lot of them. One that I like is guidance. So click on that one. Guidance is kind of an extension of your earnings. When a company reports their last quarter results, sometimes they will give an indication as to how they're sort of forecasting for next quarter, for next year. You can find that information here. This is well, a lot of traders, a lot of investors think that a company's guidance is actually more important than the quarter that they just reported. Quarter that they just reported, that's in the past. Guidance is moving ahead. It's looking to the forward. A lot of investors are looking to the future to try to do their valuations, try to do their analysis. So this is a really important one. Let's try one more here real quick, Mike. So why don't you jump over to the Analyst Ratings calendar.
Excellent.
So there you go down a couple more. There you go. Okay, so Analyst Ratings. So what are Analyst Ratings? So on the sell side versus buy side, there are brokers, there's investment firms that are recommending to their clients this stock, that stock. Where do they come up with those ideas? Well, they get them from their research firms. They get them from their sell-side research firms. And those guys and gals on the sell side are doing a ton of fundamental research. They know a ton of people at the company. They know a lot of industry sources. They're making models for these companies, and those are what the earnings reports are based off of. Those are how the performance is gauged. When we were on that earnings calendar, we were looking at the actual reported figures. We were looking at the estimates. If the company reports better than the street was looking for, the stock generally will go higher. So kind of circling back around, Analyst Ratings, again, is the research branch for the bankers who are thus selling securities to their clients. What you're looking at here is a list of all of the sell-side action for a day. On any given day, a firm like Bank of America, Citigroup, Barclays, Wedbush, they can either increase their recommendation or upgrade, or they can decrease their recommendation, or they can downgrade. Last one I would highlight is they can initiate coverage on a stock. What does that mean? That means that the analyst, there maybe was not an analyst at the firm that was covering it, or the firm wasn't covering it in general, so they had to basically begin coverage. They're starting their coverage, they're initiating their coverage. It's basically their first recommendation. When they initiate a stock, that's kind of where it goes as far as getting upgraded or downgraded. And so you can see some really basic visual helpfulness here. You can see a downgrade is labeled as red. You can see an upgrade is labeled as green. Again, generally an upgrade is going to be a good thing for a stock. Generally a downgrade is going to be a bad thing for a stock.